Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We just concluded the sutra which had certain interesting concepts in yoga psychology, such as Bahirvrutti Kalpita or Kalpita Bahirvrutti and Mahavideha Vrutti. So, these are the great and noble states of yogis, mind and consciousness. You should recall we had considered many of the vrittis, such as Asmita Vritti, Jyotishpati Vritti, Shabdasparsharupa Rasagandha Pravritti. So, Patanjali has mentioned quite a number of vrittis which are typical to yoga psychology. Vishayavati Pravritti, Vishoka Pravritti, Jyotishpati Pravritti, and now Mahavideha Pravritti. The Mahavideha Pravritti that just got mentioned shows exalted exuberance of sattva guna, dharma, punya, and all the basic components of adhyatmic jnana, which is called jnana. So also the basic components of dhyana, basic components of bhakti, basic components of paramartha, the basic components of daivi guna sampada. So, there is a beautiful collocation of all these marvelous qualities which are for those who are accomplished in Paramartha, either in Jnana Yoga or Karma Yoga or Dhyana Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. And we need to identify the importance of Satsanga for such a transformation, sadhana sangha and shastra sangha. So that would etherealize the consciousness and chitta. There will be dipyikaran, vaishvikaran, daivikaran of these mind, psyche, consciousness. So with that we are coming to the end of the sutra on Mahavideha Pravritti. So now we are proceeding to that great topic, well-known topic of ashta mahasiddhi. The yogis are known for their ashta mahasiddhis. Now the topic is going to commence. The Sutra 3.44 speaks about bhuta jaya. And bhuta jaya is the basis for ashta mahasiddhis, which are well known. So here goes the Sutra. Stool, Swarupa, Sukma, Anvaya, Arthavatva Samyamat, Bhuta Jaya. So, this Bhuta Jaya is foundational, fundamental for the well-known Ashta Mahasiddhis, which are Anima, Mahima, Garima, Laghima, etc. And of course, we will be coming to those Ashtamahasiddhis in due course. And these Ashtamahasiddhis are well known in the literature of yoga. Now, this particular samyama, which is mentioning Bhuta Jaya, The reference to bhuta is atita bhautiki principle. And yogi is well endowed with the metaphysical knowledge of elements in particular and metaphysics in general. But common man fails to see this aspect and is just gets dazzled by ashta mahasiddhis. And these ashta mahasiddhis are extremely delusive to human mind because they are indeed very great powers. That's why rightly called as ashta mahasiddhi. But we fail to understand that the yogi, by the time he gets ashta mahasiddhis, he is well versed in metaphysics, the knowledge of metaphysics. Now it all commences, the metaphysics commences with what we call as pancha mahabhutas. The prithivya, Prithvi, Aptej, Vayu, Akash, these are mahabhutas. Now we are being told that these mahabhutas, the great principles, metaphysical principles, have 5 forms. And yogi is able to get samyama in these 5 forms. And once he gets the samyama, the consequence is the great animadi astamahasiddhis, and also he gets what is referred to as kaya sampada. The point is that there are 5 forms to these elements which are discussed in metaphysics. So this sutra will definitely be a great boon and bounty for those who are interested in precepts of Sankhya philosophy and the metaphysics of Sankhya. And it is enormous jnana, exuberance of jnana, it is jnanotkarsha, beyond any imaginations. And by this jnanotkarsha, by this jnana evolving, blooming, blossoming, there is significant transformation, transmutation in the chitta dharma and chitta vijnana. So, we will have to understand basically the 5 forms, pancha rupa, rupa panchaka of mahabhutas. And this is certainly great amount of information to the seekers of yoga. And the human beings have intellectual hunger. And this intellectual hunger is exceptionally quenched by Tattvajnana, Darshana Shastra, Adhyatma Jnana, and one of those precepts is the Rupa Panchakam of Prithvi, Ap, Tej, Vayu, Akash. Now metaphysics is that which is immediately beyond the physics. The physics doesn't enter into the realm of metaphysics, and that is why it is called metaphysics. So, if you recall, at some stage we were told about the twilight of Viveka Khyati. That twilight consists so many noble subject matters, and one of them is knowledge of 5 forms of Panchamahabhutas. So Prithvi, Up, Tej, Vayu, Akash are Panchamahabhutas, and this is the outermost layer of metaphysics. So it's a very primary stage of metaphysics. It is here that the metaphysics commences, and where the limits of physics are crossed, or where the limits of physics end, the metaphysics starts operating, and that is why it is rightly called metaphysics. And of course, the physics of our time has now started crawling into metaphysics. That can be admitted here, and that should be admitted here, that ultra-modern science that is there in our times, the metaphysics, the curtain has been raised, which was not the case 200, 300, 400, 500 years back, even in the scientific arena. And this here, the Tattvajnana and Darshana Shastra has a monopoly. This also is something that needs to be admitted, that it is monopoly of Tattvajnana, what is called as Tattvajnana, what is called as Darshana Shastra. The point is, in Sankhya philosophy, tenets of Sankhya, Pancha Mahabhutas are grossest principles. Now, although these are grossest of metaphysical principles, they don't come under microscope or even electron microscope. And average human intelligence cannot creep into this realm of metaphysics. So to embark upon this intriguing subject, let me make an opening statement that the land that you have under your feet, the ground that you have under your feet, is not Prithvi Mahabhuta. Or if somebody has offered a glass of water, that water is not Jala Mahabhuta, Up Mahabhuta. Not only that glass of water, but even if you are sighting an ocean, boundless ocean, extending up to horizon and even beyond, that is also not Up Tattva or Up Mahabhuta. If you are sighting flames of fire, those flames of fire also are not Agni Tattva. Not only that flame of fire, but a star in the sky, which is said to be magnitude-wise the hottest of the stars, called blue stars, class of stars called blue stars, where the temperatures are soaring to 50 and 60 and 70,000 Celsius, even that is not Agni Mahabhuta. The breeze, the tempest, the tornadoes, hurricanes, vortex, even they are not Vayu Tattva or Vayu Mahabhuta. Or vast spread of blue sky over the head is not Akasha Tattva. Because these are all Drushyamana objects. They are visible objects. You can see them. And therefore they are not of the class of subtle, because subtle implies invisible, ungraspable. So all that is visible to naked eyes and all that is visible to microscopes and electron microscopes and telescopes and Hubble telescopes, you don't sight the tattvas. So therefore, you should recall we had discussed a topic called quintuplication for manifest form of Panchatattvas. If the 5 elements are manifesting, then they are called quintuplicated elements. That is called Panchikaranam. That means if the manifestation is of the nature of earth, there is only 50% of earth and 12.5% each is shared by other 4 principles. If the manifest object is of the nature of water, it is only 50% of principle of water and 12.5 each is shared by other 4 principles. So is the case of fire, where the fire is sighted, it is only 50% of principle of fire and 12.5 each is shared by other 4 principles. So that is how the visible manifestations are said to be panchikrita, quintuplicated. Basically, the Panchamahabhutas are prakrutika. They are of Prakriti. They come from Prakriti. They are evolutes of Prakriti. And they are for Bhogardhata and Apavargardhata, as mentioned by Patanjali in the 2nd chapter. The stark materialists, which are described by Indian philosophy as Jadavadi, Nastik, Pakhandi, Upabhogavadi, Vilasavadi, Chainavadi, Bhogavadi, all these materialistic people for them, Prithvi in the form of earth, etc., earth, fire, water, etc., are great elements called mahabhuta. Now this concept that comes in Sankhya philosophy is also very interesting, because Sankhya philosophy is not referring to elements, it is referring to mahabhuta. Bhuta means ghost and maha means great. So these are great ghosts which arrest mankind and human being and all living things in the shackles of bhoga. They also parch by way of tapatrayas. And this is more particular to human being, that human being is parched by what is referred to as tapatraya. Adi bhautika tapa, adhyatmika tapa, adi daivika tapa. And therefore they are ghosts. They are haunting us and they are invisible, like is the case of ghost. You cannot be seeing a ghost, but you can see the impact and influence of ghost. That's what the ghost is. So in Sankhya parlance, these are referred to as Pancha Mahabhuta, great ghosts. But when it comes to spiritual practices, upasana, for astikas, for the shraddhavan, or those who are endowed with Daivi Guna Sampada, those who are Ishwarvadi, those who are Bhagavata Janas, those who are Bhagavatas, or those who adore Bhagavatas, who are called Sajjana, noble people. For the noble people, Pancha Tattvas become Pancha Devatas or Pancha Tattvas. So these concepts have come in Oriental wisdom. The Pancha Mahabhutas are referred to as Pancha Tattvas. Pancha Tattvas are referred to as Pancha Devatas. And the Devatas are always there for bounty. And therefore in spiritual path, these 5 elements become Prithvi Devata, Jala Devata or Varuna Devata, Teja Devata or Agni Devata, Vayu Devata, Dig Devata or Akasha Devata. And then they become worship worthy. They become Upasaniya and Prarthaniya. So 5 Mahabhutas become 5 Daivatas. So we can infer that they have different forms. Their one form is of the nature of being ghosts, great ghosts. The other forms are of the nature of being deities, principles, etc. So the samadhi that is mentioned here, it should be understood that it is not samyama on the ghosts, but samyama on the tattvas, principles, and samadhi on the deities. And the Panchamahabhuta in the form of tattvas and in the form of devatas become samadhi objects because they are so noble. Anyway, coming to Sutra, we are told that the Prithviadi, may call it bhutas or tattvas or devatas, there are 5 forms. What are these 5 forms? Sthula, Swarupa, Sukma, Anvaya, Arthavatva. So these are said to be 5 forms. And samyama on these 5 forms results into bhuta jaya. Elements are conquered by a yogi because of samyama on these 5 forms, namely Sthula, Sukma, Sthula, Swarupa, Sukma, Anvaya, Arthavatva. So let me give opening description here. Sthula means gross. Swarupa means substantive form. Sukma means subtle form. Anvaya means the form of the nature of Sattva Rajatama concomitants, and Arthavatva is the purpose by way of Bhoga Apavarga. So these are 5 forms of the Prithvyadi Mahabhutas, and the consequence of it is Bhuta Jaya, and consequence of Bhuta Jaya is Animadi Siddhis. Now these forms are Atindriya because they cannot be sensory objects. Whatever has been mentioned here, Sthula, Swarupa, Sukma, Anvaya, Arthavatva, these are not sensory objects. You cannot grasp them by your sensory process. So they are beyond sensory grasp. Anyway, the gross manifestation of these elements, metaphysical elements, is called Sthula Rupam. Not gross because it is visible, which we refer to something as earthen, something as watery, something as fiery, something as gaseous, etc., or something as spatial. So the reference to grossness is not this way. Of course, we will be seeing what is the gross form, which is implied here. But one thing can be said, when the mahabhutas get qualities called guna, akara called form, and dharmadi characteristics, etc., that is sthula rupam. That's the first form of the elements. Now this rupa may be seen or may not be seen, and more often it is not seen, but it is felt. Like certain qualities in a person. A person is noble. Now it is not an object, but it can be sensed. The nobility of a person can be sensed. It is not tangible aspect. The qualities such as magnanimity, nobility, etc. But then one can have parisamvedana, or they can be parisamvedita. You can sense them, and therefore you say this person is noble person, or this object is a noble object. So these are sensed, not in the sense that senses perceive it, but human psyche consciousness senses it. Now this sensability gives us basis to believe in Panchamahabhutas. Like we believe that a person is noble, although we cannot see the nobility of the person, yet we can believe in it. There is basis to believe in it. And therefore the Mahabhutas are accepted by the Rupa that is mentioned here. The second form of the elements is called Swarupa. Swarupa means substantive form, because that is adhering to the substance itself. Therefore it is substantive form. So in philosophical discussion it is called Swarupa Lakshana. You should recall that we had discussed with Swarupa Lakshana and Tatastha Lakshana, and this is Swarupa Lakshana. But from the philosophical dimension it is actually Tatastha Rupam, although it is substantive. Now let me give an example here. What is the incidental characteristic of fire? That there is luminosity and there is heat. So what is this Swarupa? You will have to ask this question to a scientist or a physicist. The form that you take it as substantive form as a layman is not endorsed. But Vaigyanika, Bhautika Shastragnya, they will tell you about the Swarupa. Now this also can be explained, and it is explained in the Sankhya Shastra in the following ways. What is the Swarupa of Prithvi? Murtatva, Kathinya, Sakaratva. That is the Swarupa. Murtatva, manifestness. Kathinya, the toughness and hardness. Sakaratva, having shape and form. That is of the Prithvi. About the Ap Tattva, Snehatva, because there is capillary attraction in the substances. Snehatva, Sheetalatva, the coldness, cooling effect. And Akathinya, non-hardness. That is of Ap Tattva. Now Teja Tattva, Ushnata, Taptata, Vipakatva, Paripakatva, the heat, temperature, and ability to process any object. Like we know that when you hold an object in fire, it does some kind of processing and it cooks it. So that is Vipakatva, Paripakatva. The Vayu is to flow, and Gatimanata is enormous velocity and its flow. The Vayu is seen to be having a flow, and sometimes it can have ferocious velocity, like the case of vortex. Akasha is Sarvavyapakatva and Apadachyuttatva. Akasha is something that cannot be dislodged. Like you can create air vacuum from a container, you can remove all air. You can remove all dampness and wetness. But you can't remove the space from a container. So, Apadachyuttatva, Padachyutatva not possible. Expelling not possible. So it is expellable element. You cannot expel it from anywhere. Because even if you fill up the container, the space gets into the contents. And Sarva Vyapakatva, it is all pervasive. So that is the Bhuta Swarupam, the second form. That's also is said to be Samanya Rupam. So we get the sensation, perception of these elements by Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa Gandha Jnanam, Samvedana or Grahanam. So let's see what Vyasa tells us here additionally. He says every bhuta, every element has its own form, swataha, the rupa of its own self, swata rupam. And it is typical and specific. And that's why we classify the 5 elements with different characteristics. So there is concomitance and exclusion of certain things if you take any one of the 5 elements. So they have their specific form. And the Samanya plus Vishesha is called dravya in Bhautika Shastra of the Orientalist. Samanya plus Vishesha is dravya. This is the definition that you get in philosophical systems. And that is the material of all Bhautika Padarthas. They are material. Samanya and Vishesha together become matter and material for any manifestation. So the point is, the first of the Rupa is called Sthula Rupa. The second one is called Swarupa. And by the combination of the Rupa and Swarupa, we get the manifest creation around us. Now, we commoners don't have knowledge about Vastu, Vishaya, Tattva, Dravya, Samanya and Vishesha. So, to give little introductory aspects and instructions here, the Prithvi has Samanya Rupam of the nature of Kathinya, and its Vishesha Rupam is Gandhavatva. Now, this is what the metaphysics or metaphysicists declare, that Gandhavatva Prithvi, Gandhavatva is the special of the element of earth, and common man is not aware of this. He only sees the Samanya Lakshana, which is solidity, Kathinya, hardness of Prithvi element. But together, Samanya and Kathinya together turns out a dravya, a substance called Prithvi. And therefore, Samanya Vishesha Samudaya Samuchaya is to be understood here. And apart from the Darshanikas, these are very, very terse terms to understand. So one should really be becoming familiar with philosophical postulations or outlooks, and then certain things which are inconceivable will start graspable. So to just mention, for a Darshanika, there is something called as Avantara Vibhaga Bodhaka Shabdena Upatta Bheda Avayavanugata. So this is how metaphysicists looks at the elements, which is not the way physicists would look at these elements. So the first one, Avantara Vibhaga Bodhaka, by merely articulation, by using the words, certain components are inferred. But the bodhanam is not possible. To recognize, to identify them is not possible. Like for example, the body. The body is collocation of indriyas and avayavas. Even a tree is part of so many components such as roots and trunk and branches and barks and leaves and fruits and flowers. So all these things coming together is what is called as tree. In forest you get one Pashu Samudaya. You get so many animals and beasts in a forest. You get so many kinds of trees, botanical species in a forest. So that is referring to the components. The forest is not just studded with trees, but various kinds of trees. So if you identify the kinds of trees, that is called identifying the components. So you identify the tree as a collocation of parts such as roots and trunks and branches and barks and leaves and flowers and fruits. So that is the particularity of the tree. So an example can be given which comes in the text of yoga. Deva Manava Samudaya, Deva Danava Samudaya, or Dagad and Mati. That is, what is the earth? Earth is stones, boulders, rocks, pebbles, granules and sand. So we refer to something as the sand and rocks when we refer to the terrain condition of that location, or anna pani, that is food and water, or hava pani, referring to the weather and water. So it can be a samuchaya, such as Dev, Danav, Dagad, Mati, Anna, Pani. So that is, on one hand you get Deva, Dagad, Anna, Hava. On the other hand you get Manav or Danav, Mati and Pani. So that is Shabdenu Upatta Bheda Avayava Anugata. So they have again further differentiations called Vivakshita specific and Avivakshita unspecific. What is this intriguing aspect? See, the mango orchards, it's called Amrai, and in English we call it mango orchards. So there are several mango trees. Then an expression such as Brahma Vrunda, that means collocation of the Brahmin caste. Many Brahmins come together and they make it Brahma Samudaya. Many mango trees come together and they make it orchards. So in orchards you get all mango trees, and the individuals in all the Brahma Vrunda, you get all Brahmins there. And therefore metaphysics speaks about something as Yuta Siddha Avayava Sambandha, Ayuta Siddha Avayava Bheda, Pruthakiya Apruthakiya Avayava Sambandha. So something can be separated or something cannot be separated. What is Yuta Siddha Avayava Siddha Sambandha? It is forest. There are many classes of trees in the forest. Mango tree, pipal tree, fig tree, ashwatha tree, various kinds of trees are there. And perhaps all these various classes of trees also can be having a body, that there can be several mango trees, several pipal trees, several fig trees, several sandalwood trees, and so that becomes samudaya, and that becomes the forest. Now Ayuta Siddha Sambandha, the example is body. You cannot separate the senses and parts of the body and yet say it is a body. So also case of tree. You cannot isolate and separate the parts of the tree such as roots and trunk and bark and branches and leaves and flowers. You cannot separate them. The tree means, in the very idea of tree, you have the collocation, which is inseparable and indivisible. So when there is indivisibility, then that is called Ayuta Siddha Sambandha. So Patanjala speak about this metaphysical aspect of Ayuta Siddha Sambandha, and that is called dravya, and Yuta Siddha Sambandham. So point is, the Panchamahabhutas have second form called substantive form, Swarupa. And to tell you about that, I had to tell you of all these things which are very difficult to crack through and conceive. See, even in our modern sciences, chemistry, it speaks about certain basic elements. They are called dravya. And to learn all these things, you need to have formal education. Then you will be told about whatever those elements which are there in this world, which the chemistry speaks about. So you need to have a formal education there. Informal process will not tell you about these intriguing things, but they are not intriguing once you are a student of chemistry. So once you are a student of Adhyatma, Paramartha, once you are in sadhana, and once you are familiar with metaphysical precepts, it won't be intriguing. It is intriguing because we are not familiar with the metaphysics, nor are we familiar with sadhana. So that is the Swarupam. The next is called Sukma Rupam. The Sukma Rupam is again delineated in metaphysics. Akasha has only one anu. It has only one quality. Vayu has two qualities. Teja has three qualities. Ap Tattva has 4 and Prithvi has 5. If you recall the topic of metaphysics that was discussed in Sadhana Pada earlier, there we were told about this. So Akasha has 1 guna, Vayu has 2, Agni has 3, Ap has 4, Prithvi has 5. So this is described and delineated in metaphysics. So Akasha is constituted by something that is called tan matra, infra-atomic structure of elements. So that is the Sukma Rupam. So with that introductory discussion of the Sukma Rupam, we will end the session today before we proceed to the next 2 forms. So today we are drawing curtains on this sutra topic, matter of the sutra, by coming to Sthula Rupa and Swarupa and now Sukma Rupa, which circumscribes the infra-atomic structure of elements called Tanmatra. So let's proceed on this topic in our next session. So enough for the time being. Namaskar all of you.